I'm Sheldon McLeod. Welcome back. This is Thinking Out Loud, presented to you here across the SaltWire network. And again, I remind you about our YouTube channel. If you haven't joined, do so if you haven't subscribed. Also, this is available on podcasts everywhere. So there's a video component, audio component. Obviously, we'll see this article a little later today on saltwire.com. And I ran across something very interesting as this whole conversation about food inflation has been percolating for the last number of months. I recognize Jagmeet Singh from the NDP is saying this is the fault of the grocery companies. We hear the leader of the official opposition, Pierre Poilievre, saying, no, this is all about Justin Trudeau. The prime minister hasn't really said one way or another other than to describe it as a global issue and that Canada is performing well. And to hear a bit more about that, you could head to saltwire.com. Why your grocery bill has increased and who's to blame? It's a big question, and this answer may surprise you. I reached out to John Jamieson of Stratford, Prince Edward Island. He's president and CEO of the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity. He has also served as a PEI Deputy Minister of Agriculture, and this is a real honor for me to say good day and welcome Mr. Jamieson. John Jamieson, thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Sheldon. I appreciate you having me on your program.
What exactly can you tell us, first of all, about the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity and your role with them?
Well, the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity is a fairly new organization, which is, you may not have heard of it before. And we're a national nonprofit. And our sole purpose is to connect the food system with the consumer. And we're membership based. So we serve our members by providing research. And one of the things that we do every year is a big roll-up of what Canadians are thinking about in the food system. So we interview folks from all across Canada in all demographics and all provinces, and we provide our members and others in the food system with, this is what Canadians are thinking about. And one of the things that is top of mind has always been cost of food, and we've certainly seen that increase over the years. We're unique in a way that we represent everything from farm organizations right through to retailers. And so we don't sell anything, so we don't have an axe to grind. We don't lobby, so we don't lobby on behalf of any sector or type of production. And really, we're there to think about and consider how we can build a more resilient Canadian food system and inform Canadians about what a wonderful program we have here in Canada.
Now, it was very good to hear you clarifying some of the questions I had about whether it was a lobby association, whether you're a membership association, whether you're representing the grocery companies. Are grocery companies members of your organization?
Yes, grocery companies are, as well as food production companies, as well as farm organizations. Actually, in a lot of cases, provincial and federal government departments are members of our organization. So we have a really unique mix of members. And so we actually don't speak on behalf of retailers or government or farm organizations or anyone. We try to present the facts of the food system to Canadians. And
your role, what is your job?
I'm the president and CEO. I joined the organization about 3.5 years ago. After I left government of PEI as a deputy minister.
Right. Let's talk about this opinion piece. And it does sound like you're saying there's no one thing that's to blame here?
I think the reason I penned the opinion piece is because in reading through articles in newspapers, opinion pieces, interviews that we see, there's a fair bit of finger pointing going on. And I think when you actually do a fairly heavy analysis of what's happening in food prices, finger pointing really doesn't get you anywhere and really doesn't explain what's going on. So, there's a number of factors with reduced labor availability out there, and that's reducing the output of some of our production companies. I know in one case, production company said to me, a food producer told me lately, on any given day, we're down 25% of our capacity. And then you have the war in Ukraine, you have climate change effects, you have inflation for farmers, you have avian influenza. There's just a number of factors that have come together that have really increased the price of food. So rather than finger pointing, we're thinking people should inform themselves, and then we need to think about what are the things that we need to do to make a more resilient food system.
Rage farming is something that we see quite often in social media in this country, and it is about blame, or at least some people feel better to point to a particular person or individual or organization to say, that's the reason why. Well, is this a reason for us just to step back and wait for it to solve itself, or what actions can you subscribe to here?
Well, there's a number of actions that we can take, both from a policy perspective and from a personal perspective. I think when we think about government policy and the like, one of the things that we're seeing is a fairly significant reduction in the availability of farmland across Canada. We're losing a lot of good farmland to residential or other uses. And when you take that good farmland we have out of production, that certainly impacts the ability of our producers to produce good quality food. The other thing I think that we need to think about is how we celebrate the diversity of production systems in Canada. And a lot of times we'll say, well, that we should be all small farms, or we should be all large farms, or we should do away with corporate farms. I think the most important thing that we need to recognize is there's space for everyone in our food system in Canada. There's space for small producers, whether at the production level or at the processing level. There's room for large, there's room for corporate, and again, that's what makes our system resilient, and the fact that we have different types. There's room for organic, conventional, you name it. Government has to continue to, what I say, is to support good ideas. And when I worked in government, one of the things that I thought about is how we can support people who come up with good ideas and de-risk some of the measures they take to advance the system. And we also need to make sure we invest in research. We need to make sure that we're producing and developing more heat-tolerant crops because of the impact that climate change is having on us. We need to think about better genetics in both our plants and animals. Really, really build on Canada is lagging behind in research funding, and we need to step that up. And then individually, we really need to think about food waste, because that is a huge issue in Canada when 63% of the food that's wasted annually could have been eaten. And in Canada, we waste about $20 billion worth of food a year. That's food that's purchased, that's produced, that has greenhouse gas effects, but not consumed by consumers. And individually, if we can reduce our food waste, it's good for the environment, but it's also good for our pocketbook. The average Canadian household wastes about $1,300 worth of food a year. That's significant.
At a time when food inflation is at double digits, not seen since the 1980s. Yeah. As an organization that represents many different sides of this, and I'm sure that you're quite used to having direct questions as someone who served in the legislature. What is wrong with saying, look at the profits that grocery companies are making and the salaries that come with it? What's wrong with pointing at that and saying, well, that doesn't seem fair when I'm paying $8 for broccoli?
Yeah, I think it's the easy thing to do is to point fingers and be angry. And it's understandable why Canadians are angry when they are paying, food inflation is outstripping housing, fuel, other things. So it's easy to be angry and say, you're doing a bad thing. And, but I think that, like I said, the reality is there's a number of things coming together that we understand that profits are important right across the board. We need to have profitable farms. We need to have profitable food producers. Our grocery stores need to have profit, and that allows them to invest and become more resilient and do a better job of sustainability. Like I said, it's easy to be angry. I'm not sure it accomplishes a whole lot. And I think we all need to think about how can we arm ourselves with the best information possible around our food system, and how can we work together to help solve this problem that we have.
So how do we square the whole idea that competition is supposed to be healthy, yet we have large corporations, very few of them controlling a lot of the grocery industry. Others will point to a supply management system that doesn't fit within the models of some other ideas of global trade and global economic activity. So how do we square that, knowing that you represent a lot of the sides in those conversations? Does it in some way keep John from saying there are people to blame or there are issues? And I'm not trying to raise rage here, farm rage, but the idea that those are some significant things. Those are facts.
Yeah, they are facts, and again, we try to present the facts. We don't, like I say, we don't allow any of our members to have any input into what we say. So there are good profit taking in some cases. Supply management. I'm a big fan of supply management. I think what it does, it allows our farms to match the production with the demands of the public. It allows farmers to have a good income, a decent income that they can reinvest in their organizations and farms and become more sustainable. When you don't have that profit taking and the ability to make changes, I think that's when we struggle and fall behind. We need to make money right across the board, and it's really not a bad thing. Competition is good. Certainly, we're competing with food companies all around the world. A lot of our Canadian food is imported right now, and we're actually one of the largest exporters of food in Canada. That's a good thing. We're able to feed people around the world, and I think that's a thing that we should be proud of. But I think the fact that different organizations and are, for example, we know some of the grocery stores have invested in drugstores and they're clothing. When you go to a grocery store and you look at your cart at the end of the day, there's a lot of stuff in there that's not food related. So, a lot of the profit taking may be food related for sure, but it may be other products that they're serving. I know myself, I come home at the end of the day and I look at what I bought at a grocery store, probably 50 to 60% of it's food, a lot of it's other items. So I think, again, it's pretty simplistic to point a finger and say, you're doing bad and you need to do better. I think what we need to think about is, how do we arm ourselves with the best information possible? How do we put processes and policies in place that make sure that we are able to continue having a world-class food system in Canada, because we're under a lot of pressure. Pressure from competition, pressure from climate change, pressure from disease. You think of avian influenza and how's that affected chicken prices. We're at a turning point in our food system, and the best thing to do is to think about how we can move forward rather than pointing fingers.
And I've had some time in the volunteer and nonprofit world, and I will tell you, it's always easier to save money than it is to raise money. And you raise a very interesting and important point. You could save $100 a month on your food budget by not wasting food. Yeah. That's a huge thing. I just saw an article at SaltWire saying there's some new AI or artificial intelligence menu planners and ways of using that technology to save on your groceries and perhaps have less food waste. Yeah. So those are all very important issues. John Jamieson, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we wrap this up?
No, like I said, I think it's just important to really sift through the information that we see in social media or in the media, and do our best to think about what good information is available to us, and then how we can all work as a united food system and united Canadians to do a better job and continue to produce really good food in Canada.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this topic and for writing the piece that you can read more about at saltwire.com. John Jamieson, President and CEO of the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity, former PEI Deputy Minister of Agriculture. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sheldon.